Welcome back to another segment of Behind the Scenes of the Waltons. I wanted to wish everyone a happy Memorial Day, and this segment is going to be paying tribute to the stories on the Waltons that sort of represented Memorial Day and those who served and would be honored during the course of the show. I also wanted to remind everybody that members of the cast of the Waltons will be appearing at the Hollywood show on June 6th and 7th at the Burbank Marriott in the sort of Hollywood area of California. That's right by the Burbank Airport. And members of the cast who are currently scheduled to be there are Richard Thomas, Michael Learned, Cammie Kotler, David Harper, Eric Scott, and myself. And there will also be actors from other shows that you may be familiar with. So you can go to hollywoodshow.com and look up Hollywood Show, and it'll tell you information, how to get tickets, and also who else is scheduled to be there. So if you're around the area or want to come out to the area to meet some of your favorite celebrities, then we would love to meet you, sign autographs, take pictures, etc., etc. Although there was only one episode that specifically honored the war veterans, the heroes, those who had died in service to their country. And that was in The Hero, which really sort of focused on a local celebration. And John Boy was looking into those who had served from the area. And he was focused on Ep Bridges, who he knew had served. And we found out more about Ep's time in the war, and that he was a hero, though he didn't necessarily talk about his time because he felt that it was very personal and it wasn't something that he wanted to glorify, that he did what he had to do, and too many men were lost to feel like it was something that he would celebrate. But they did pay honor to those that were lost, including John's brother, Grandpa and Grandma's son, Ben, our Uncle Ben. And our Ben, our family member, had created a lovely bench in honor of Uncle Ben, and he unveiled that at the ceremony honoring those who had fallen in the war. As far as getting into World War II, we did lose members of the community. Of course, the first person that we lost was in the episode The First Casualty, when we found out that GW had died in a training accident. And, it hit the whole family. Everybody had their own personal connection to GW. Erin took it the hardest because she felt responsible for it, because she felt that GW only signed up because he'd asked her to marry him, and she didn't say yes. She wasn't prepared. She didn't feel that that was where the relationship was at that moment, and then he signed up. So then she felt guilty about that. And of course, she and Ralph had that stunning scene at the end when he reads the letter that GW left for Erin. And of course, Mary Ellen was impacted because that was her first boyfriend that we met. And Curt was there, and he was the one that brought GW's body back for his parents to be able to bury him. So it was a very emotional episode because it was the first time the community had been impacted by the impending war, and that our young men were signing up and going off to fight, and the recognition that not all of them were going to return. So a very emotional one. And some people have said, oh, why did they kill off GW? And what my understanding is that there were conversations about wanting to deal with the impact of the war and the realities of it, that there were going to be young men who were lost. And so they didn't want to kill off one of the family, and yet they wanted the impact to be close to home. So at that point, I guess they felt that GW was really close to the family. I don't think at that point I don't know that they knew that they were going to kill off Curt. I think that was perhaps a decision between season 6 and season 7, or into season 7. So GW was our first casualty. The next episode was Day of Infamy, when we dealt with the bombing of Pearl Harbor and the official entry into the war of the United States, and finding out that Curt had been killed at Pearl Harbor, and that heartbreaking scene when Jim Bob comes and delivers the telegram and gives Mary Ellen the news. And once again, a heartbreaking letter read by John, by Ralph Waite, talking about Curt's final message to Mary Ellen and to the family and to his son, John Curtis. And again, I can't watch that scene without crying. It just, it was all so real, and we were so close, and we built those relationships and we created them. So losing Curt, even though it wasn't real, just felt so real and brought home the impact of families dealing with the loss of loved ones in the war. Moving into season 8, the first episode was the Homefront, where John deals with the consequences of being part of the draft board and the fact that he drafted Tommy Satterfield. And then when Tommy went AWOL, he was instrumental in convincing Tommy that he needed to go back rather than, be court-martialed or whatever it was that would happen to him if he didn't, as a deserter. So Tommy goes back and he dies, and that is another casualty. And John feels very responsible that if he hadn't had to do his job and been part of the draft board and drafted him. And then, of course, there's the whole conflict with Tommy's dad, where then Tommy's dad is threatening to kill one of John's sons. And so it's, again, yet another very emotional storyline, and the loss of another young man from the Walton community. In the episode The Silver Wings, Jim Bob befriends Betsy Randolph and develops a real crush on her. And she is there. Her husband is away in the war. And before the end of the episode, she gets word that her husband died. So although it is not someone we knew or met, through Jim Bob and his relationship with Betsy, we feel the impact of that loss. Later in season 8, in the episode The Furlough, John Boy, who still is dealing with the loss of memory about what happened when the plane he was in was shot down. He's having sort of nightmares and flashes of memory, and he's not quite sure what it means, but ultimately his memory does come back, and he recalls that his best friend over there, Stuart, who was the co-pilot of the plane that was shot down, actually was killed in that plane crash. So John Boy has had a very traumatic personal experience with being in that plane that was shot down and then losing his memory, and then the painful memory as it comes back of having lost his best friend. So those were some of the episodes during the course of the series that specifically related to those lost during World War I and World War II. Of course, so many more were lost. And Ben was taken prisoner, and they just dealt with a lot of situations. And I feel like those were important storylines that we dealt with over those seasons 6 through 8 of the Waltons. So to all of you watching who have lost loved ones in service to our country, we thank you. We thank you to those who serve and continue to be there to protect the rest of us and serve our country. So happy Memorial Day to all of you. And we hope that those of you who are serving stay safe. And we send our best wishes to all of you and your families. Thank you for joining me for this Memorial Day tribute and overview of how that was reflected on the Waltons. I'll be back with more behind the scenes of the Waltons, more Ask Judy. And next up in the next segment, I will be sharing an overview of my recent European trip. So just what the highlights were and some different pictures that were taken and a few maybe surprises. So I hope you will tune in for that. Thanks for watching.